We're live. Okay. Welcome to the podcast, people. My name's Jess,
My name's Fee.
and we've been best friends for forever. And we've always wanted to start a podcast talking about because we always have. We're both very talkative. We both have tons to say about like everything. So we thought, why not just start this shit? I just tried to start a YouTube channel. Fee already does tons of stuff with videos, so we're gonna try now. Just talk, and you guys listen to us. Bless you, babe. Bless you. Um, and one of the things that we're both super passionate about is education. I feel. Agreed? Yes.
Yes, it's true.
And I feel like our collective mini idea is this new venture called Unlearnt, which is about changing the way that people are taught and teaching what we weren't taught in school, which is like what this YouTube thing that we've started now is, and what the general vibe of this podcast is going to be. It's going to be about things that aren't spoken about or that we think are done in the wrong way. And we're just going to debate how they should be done and tons of different things. And today we're going to be speaking about why. Oh, bless
Sorry.
you.
I'm with you.
We're going to be speaking about to what extent, like, does school actually help you find what you should be doing, your vocation in life? Does school help you pair up with this thing that's floating around and make you guys come together and collide? Or does it do the opposite? Yeah, Fee?
Yeah,
Okay,
100%.
fine. Okay, so first thing we're going to be saying is, like, what do you think that why do you think the government thinks that the way that schools are run right now is like a good thing? Why is the curriculum shaped the way it is? Why do we have certain exams at certain stages? Why do we graduate 18? All these kind of things. What do you think the government's thinking is behind that?
Mm. So, one thing that we have spoken about prior to this podcast is the overwhelming impact of capitalism on the education system. And living in a capitalist society, um, we found that things tend to work in the direction of economy driving education as opposed to education driving economy.
Mm,
And because of this, the schooling system reflects that notion. Um, so instead of living in a society where people would pick their ultimate vocation and then be paid for it because you need money to survive, they look for something that will make them a lot of money and
yeah,
just hope that it will fit something that they enjoy doing. So we've got the system backwards, and because everyone's doing this, that it's really hard to evade it. And I'm sure we'll come to talk on later about dropouts and people who um, kind of go against the system and how they basically go against the social meritocracy. So people will look down on them, and it's a very risky thing to do. So
yeah, and it's quite backwards because instead of having people do what they would be 10 out of 10 at compared to the rest of society, so we had the 10 out of 10 artists, the 10 out of the 10, I don't know, chefs, etc. We instead have this lump crowding towards these specific types of jobs, which they
yeah,
make 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, leaving this stuff a bit, abandoned. Do you get what I'm saying?
completely. And on top of that, there's not good networks for the people who are left behind. Like the whole
Mm,
point of schooling, okay, so I'm just going to specify private schooling right now, is people like making connections and networking at those schools. But that predominantly happens for these clumps that you're talking about. There's
yeah.
like a networky clump. But the artists, the musicians, the athletes, unless they get rocketed to the top, they're left behind,
Mm,
and it's very, very hard to fend for themselves, even though those are the ones who are more like self actualized because they're more in congruence with what they want to do. So,
mm.
from a psychological point of view, they're probably much better off.
Yeah, interesting. But so, okay, we said before that school keeps it broad because
Yeah.
you don't know when you're from 0 to 18, you don't know what the hell you want to do. And yeah, even further than that, you're not going to know. But then when we were at school, everyone's complaining that why am I being taught this when I don't like it? Why am I being taught this? I'd rather
Mhm.
just do this. You know what I mean? So how should we get the balance between what we should be teaching and when to kind of drop these things? Because we can't, it's too difficult to, what's it called, personalize each person's education. But maybe that's what we should be doing. If a person, you know what I mean? It's very
Yeah, well,
difficult. Yeah.
I had quite a strong visual come to mind when you said that, and it was that instead of taking a subject, you would take a course
Mm,
in one particular part of a subject. So instead of taking geography, you'd take volcanoes, and it would be a 1 term or even a 6 week
right.
course.
Yeah.
And that way, over time, you'd accumulate points in different courses and it would become clear, So imagine you, like, if you did this from a young age and your
Yeah.
parents helped you pick the courses, and then as you got older, you picked them for yourself, you would kind of get this colourful map of the different courses coming through, and you start to see which ones you gravitated towards, which ones you naturally had a stronger inclination towards. Um, and I
Mm,
really don't think that would be that difficult to do because teachers have to prepare their subjects in terms of those categories anyway. So it would just be like breaking it up.
yeah. And then the kid is choosing an actual, because you may not like geography, but you may like a chunk of geography. So then you're still
Exactly.
enjoying it. You're still positive. You still see school as a positive thing. It's like the American university system, but
Exactly.
at a younger age.
Applying that.
So instead of subject topics, because people have
Exactly.
many different interests and topics. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Fine.
That's the best thing I can think of. And furthermore, with that, someone who's interested in psychology could study psychology from the point of view of biology, philosophy, um, history. Like you could take one topic, but actually be looking at it through lots of different subjects. And that way, when you come to 18 and you decide you want to study psychology, you've got all these different viewpoints to bring in. You
Mm,
know, so to me that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's probably just a matter of being stuck in a rut or habit. That schools wouldn't change their system to do it that way.
yeah, no, completely. It's so old-fashioned and stagnant, the system sort of. But okay, so that's in terms of subjects. So we're still keeping in the old-fashioned subjects like maths, geography. We're just dividing them all into topics. We still think that they do deserve some like concentration, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about all the stuff that isn't included, like money and relationships, emotions? Do we need to get taught about that in school?
Right. Well, okay, so I think that it's really presumptuous of schools to think that this stuff will get taught at home. I mean, from my experience with mental health, the majority of people in my circle did not get taught this stuff at home
Mm,
and had to learn the very hard way of from ending up broke or from having an unplanned pregnancy or um, being in an abusive relationship to realize that those weren't things that were good. And to me, school is meant to prepare us for life, and it's basically taking on a surrogate role of parenthood because
yeah.
our parents are in a capitalist system, which means that they can't do it themselves. And the
Yeah.
government, being an overseeing force, also can ensure that everyone gets fair treatment, like fair and equal treatment.
Yeah, interesting. And also your parents, it's interesting that schools assume that parents have already been taught those skills that they are supposedly supposed to hand on to you. They may not have even been taught them themselves, and then we're just in this,
Exactly.
complete
I mean,
cycle.
who's teaching? Who's doing the teaching?
Yeah.
It's very presumptuous. Is the main word that comes to mind for me.
But then I was listening to a podcast yesterday, which was kind of political, and they were talking about the woman was arguing for small government. She thinks that the power is completely in the individual, and we need to start focusing on families and communities, and that your direct source of, you know, everything should be your family and your community. And we are starting to become way too dependent on our government, thinking it's like God, thinking that if we're in a financially poor situation, the government needs to fix it. If we're in a mentally poor situation, the government needs to fix it. Educationally poor, etc. The same way we're arguing now that we think schools should be teaching these sort of familial values, you know?
Yeah.
I kind of disagree with that. Not that I think government should be so big, but that I think if we're just going to narrow down, education should be needs to be covering those things. You need an unbiased, unrelated person teaching you core life values, you know?
Yeah. So, okay, so I really resonate with that point that the government is kind of treated like God.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to find a kind of solution to that problem because, like, parents, I what I know is that trusting individual families isn't the right way to go. Like, I know that
Yeah.
in my heart, I know that it's too much burden to put on an individual family, and like especially when you bring trauma into this story.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe communities is a better way to go. Like
Yeah.
maybe that is the answer because you know if kids had to go to community classes on the weekend to learn that kind of stuff and it was kind of ingrained into the culture and everyone was kind of checking to see that their neighbors were going, that
Mm,
could be quite, you know, I can see that being quite productive actually.
yeah. Yeah. I wonder if also like because we're so disjointed as communities now, maybe
Mm,
we before education systems maybe worked better because in addition to education you had that strong tight knit community which you lived for the
yeah,
whole of your life that taught you life and morals and values and what you stood for kind of much more efficiently I think than now where it's very easy to become a speck in the dust, you know,
yeah,
with no one that you could end up having no one kind of because if your family's busy and if your family is doing other things which is very you know common and possible then you don't have a community to just fall back on immediately. It doesn't exist, well at least in the
yeah,
city like London, you know.
yeah.
um yeah, anyway, okay, so now what I want to talk about is like 18. What do you think of the age 18? Like why do we graduate at that age? Is it right? What do you think should happen next?
Well, the reason we graduate at 18 is because it's the legalized age of an adult.
Yeah.
They put those two things together. um I think it's one of those things where it's like really easy to criticize because you know people mature at different levels, but it's also something that is really hard to change
Mm,
because you have to pick a date. Like,
yeah.
unless you made it that people, you know, had to finish a certain amount of courses or a certain amount of subjects to leave school and they could do that as quickly or slowly as they wanted. Um,
Mm,
the problem with that is that some people would do it really quickly and some people might never leave.
yeah.
So, you know, it would create a lot of imbalance. I personally don't think that 18 is um, a bad decision because I am not someone who's against people leaving school early or like people taking a year out of school. I think that that's quite a wise thing to do if you become unsure in your decision. My sister's just done that, you know?
Yeah, so okay, so we have friends and like that have dropped out at
Yeah,
16, which in the
yeah,
UK is like sixth form. It's like
yeah,
the university exams you're missing out on. And one of our friends, he did like an apprenticeship kind of instead of the sixth form thing.
yeah.
What do you think?
I
Entering the markets, the job market kind of very early on though, no?
Yeah, but at the same time, if school isn't for you, if you're not an educational person, if you're someone who's more practical and hands-on,
Yeah.
then it doesn't matter. I think the biggest problem is that people judge that decision so strongly in society. Like people
Mm,
are so, you know, school is school. School is the way it is because it's pretty much the same way it was back in the Victorian times when they were training them to work in factories. And yet people hold it to the Bible almost that like
yeah.
you must stay in school, you must stay in school. And to me, that's the problem.
Yeah, I agreed. but it's because school can't cater for those hands-on people. But then with the way that the job market is now and just entering the job world, if you're going to be doing that from 16, 17 until whatever, even like 20, 30 years, that's a lot, no? And then those valuable years, kind of that, 16 to 25, where you're still unsure, you're still figuring yourself out, you kind of miss out on that.
I hear that, but I don't think it's ever too late to go back to school. Like people can go back to
Mm.
college at any point.
Yeah,
And so someone who goes into the job market at 16 might end up setting up their own business by the time they're 25. They might, take a year out and go traveling. They might there's so many other options.
yeah,
It's not that black and white.
yeah.
But I know sometimes it can be. Like some people do go that way.
And then also, once we spoke about this a few days ago about you, did you say that you think that from like 20 to 25, it should be like, you shouldn't be doing anything? Or did you say that or not?
You
Or
shouldn't
like
be doing
traveling
anything.
or something? Or like you should be finding yourself or like not wasting those years. I don't know.
Well, I don't think I would have said that because 20 to 25 are the years where your brain is most like on.
Yeah, exactly. So
It
what do you
makes
think you should be doing?
it makes sense to me if you know what to study.
Right. Okay.
But if you don't, then it's a great time to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, fine. Okay. Agreed, I think. I just like it's just crazy that, in England you have to pick those subjects before you go to university and they have to line up with what you want to study. Otherwise you
Yeah.
can't study that thing. It just doesn't fit. Like, well, I don't know, another way to like do it, like to keep things more broad, kind of up until the end, like American high schools do.
I think learning from America would be quite wise in this case for us here in the UK.
You think it should be more broad?
I think that, yeah, because I think that it should be more broad, but then for the few people who know what they want to specialize in, they should be allowed to specialize as much as they want.
So if we have the topic system, then the
Yeah,
people that know they want to do psych, they just pick all psych topics.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
Like, I can't really floor that system. I really think we should do something with it.
Yeah. It's just that like resources wise, imagine that you have like five psych topics. Well, I
Yeah.
guess you have one teacher teaching all like different topics. I was gonna say you need a lot of people for that because if the demand doesn't meet, there's only going to be a few options with the amount of teachers you have in the school.
No, but that's kind of the point exactly is that the teachers would teach topics they were interested in. And then
Uh,
the students would pick the ones that they were interested in, and then everyone would be interested in what they were learning.
oh, another point. Teachers. How do we
Mm.
fix? Why do we have such bad teachers?
I think it has something to do with. I think honestly, it comes back to the problem we have with schools. It comes back right to the beginning of our conversation because um, jobs are driven by capitalism, and people aren't tending to find their vocations.
So people, yeah, 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 exactly.
Do you know
People,
what I mean?
people
So
that teach don't want to teach. They are just a lot of the time, sometimes obviously, and they're just doing it as a part time or as a buffer, as a
exactly, they're doing it because they don't know what else to do.
yeah. Teaching is not prioritized as a job or
No,
seen in a high regard, at least in the
no,
UK. Yeah,
no. Because
fair.
the school system is like, I want to say, isn't either. Like, school is a means to an end for most people. School is a way to go and get a job. It's
Yeah.
not in itself seen as an enriching, enlightening environment where you like learn more about yourself and the world. That's not like, have you ever heard school be described that way? Like, no. But it could be. And that's why it's such a shame. Like,
Yeah, like
it's
mm,
it's mandatory, but it's quite low down in society in terms of like um I suppose social meritocracy. It comes back to that.
weirdly, right? I mean, not weirdly, because our priorities are obvious in this world, but still. Um, I think I would have enjoyed school if it was 9 to 2 and
Okay.
or 9 to 3, and in that there was like some significant outdoor time, like one or
Mm.
2 hours socializing, doing sport, playing, doing whatever, and then the other things, it was just like a quick day, do you know? So I have the rest of my day to pursue hobbies, to pursue other things,
Mm.
and family time, friends time, blah blah blah, which is important. Like it's ridiculous, especially in England when it's so dark outside that we're doing 9 to 4, and then you go to school when it's like 8:30, when it's dark in the morning, it's dark in the night.
Yeah.
It's so depressing.
Yeah, you're right. It's, I don't know, like, unlike the 18 thing, which I'd say is quite hard to change, the amount of time that we spend at school is ridiculous. And I think the only reason it is that way is to reflect the 9 to 5.
True, yeah, which also needs to be rid of. Yeah,
Yeah. So they're just two outdated systems that we're stuck with right now.
yeah. Okay, good conclusion. All right, that's it, I think.
Oh, two outdated.
High
Um,
five.
yeah, right. That was really fun.
All right. Peace, people. Come back next time.
Yeah. See you guys. Hope you learned something. Bye.
Okay, I